one of the most important and critical phases of any fat loss diet, yet one of the most underrated and underappreciated phases of any fat loss diet is the primer phase. This is the diet before the diet. What I mean by that is what you are doing to prepare your body and your mind to diet. Before the fat loss phase starts, we need to prime you for the fat loss phase so that your body adapts the way we want it to, and you aren't as stubborn in the process, meaning your body doesn't fight back, your body doesn't resist so much, and that we have an easier time accomplishing the fat loss you're after. So in this video, I'm going to break down what we call the primer phase. We have 3 phases of fat loss dieting when we work with clients at Tailored Coaching Method, and I'm going to take you through each one of these in separate videos. The first phase is the primer phase, and this primer phase is the diet before the diet, where we prepare the client for the fat loss phase so that, again, we have favorable responses to the diet itself and we get the most out of the diet phase that comes next. That phase is the second phase. It's called the progressive phase because we are progressing the client towards the goal that they are after. And in most cases for us, that is fat loss. And then after that, we have the third phase, which is the prosper phase. The prosper phase is created as a way to educate a client on what's to come next. How do we sustain this result? How do we reverse diet to a new maintenance? And we do it in a way that allows you to hold on to the results you achieved, but also maintain balance in your life and begin to not feel like you're actually dieting anymore to do it. First initial phase where we are preparing for the fat loss diet to come, there's a few things we're going to cover. We're going to be trying to accomplish stability of our hormones. So we're trying to really optimize our hormonal system, removing any imbalances or dysfunctions, and we are trying to really get a good solid baseline for our metabolism, meaning we're not going to heal our metabolism or reverse diet in a way that's going to reverse all hormonal adaptations. But if somebody isn't properly eating and moving and recovering, they could have some dysfunction here and they might not have a completely healthy or balanced hormone system or metabolism. We just want to make sure that we create a good baseline and we create a good healthy baseline to begin from. It's kind of like our foundation, right? And everything we do really establishes that foundation, much like when you're building a house. If you want to build a house that lasts a long time and has a stable structure, you have to have a solid foundation because that's what the house is built on. Well, we don't need to get into the fancy nutrition protocols and really dive into the aggressive fat loss phases until we establish that foundation. And that's what we're doing here. So the first aspect is stabilize hormones and metabolism. Then we're going to really try to manage stress and optimize recovery. We're then going to really focus on developing consistency and increasing the adherence of the client. After that, we are going to try to create some kind of standardization within the diet so that we have an easier time adjusting the diet for fat loss results. And last but not least, we have establishing baselines. And we're really just trying to get our baseline metrics that we can adjust from going into the fat loss phase. Because if we don't have metrics to adjust, then what are we really doing here, right? It's like a GPS. I can't get you where you want to be if I don't have a starting address. And that starting address are these baselines that we're trying to track and these metrics we're accumulating during this primer phase. All right, so the first aspect that I covered here, stabilizing hormones. The easiest way for us to understand this without going into a full hormone lecture is that hormones kind of influence everything that's going on with our metabolism, right? We're not going to easily be able to lose fat if we don't have a healthy hormonal system. And it's very much so it's a double-edged sword in many ways because on one end, if we have dysfunctional hormones, then it's going to be hard for calories in versus calories out to help us lose fat because hormones impact our metabolism so much. But on the other side, if we don't optimize calories in versus calories out, that can negatively impact our hormones as well. If we get too lean, it can negatively impact our hormones. If we get too fat, it can negatively impact our hormones, right? So we always have this kind of push and pull, and we can't be on either sides of the spectrum. We have to find balance. And that's why it's important to just be aware of where hormones are at. And in this phase of the diet, this primer phase, we're not trying to create any specific hormone result. If somebody has a hormone issue, that is a completely different protocol. What we're trying to do with this stabilizing hormones area or aspect of this primer phase is really just make sure that we're crossing our T's and dotting our I's. We're checking off all the boxes that we know of that will positively influence the hormone system so that we can say we've done everything we can to make sure that they're in a good, stable place with their endocrine system, their hormone system. And an easy way to look at this is that 90% of our hormone imbalances and dysfunctions can be solved by better managing stress. Now, that's not a literal percentage from a study because there isn't a study that shows this. However, there are numerous studies that show what does impact our hormones both positively and negatively. And the positive ones are when stress is reduced and recovery is increased. And the negative ones are showing that when stress is increased and recovery is decreased, we have worse off hormones, right? So how do we do this? How do we manage stress to improve our hormones? It's really simple. We eat more calories. We're going to get higher quality and quantity, so more sleep and better sleep. We're going to manage life stress better, and we're going to improve program design within the gym. And specifically with that, we're going to make sure we're not overtraining, right? It doesn't always mean you need to train less, because sometimes people's programming is just so bad that it doesn't allow them to optimally recover between sets and between days in the gym and weeks training, essentially. So we can string together training sessions and exercise sequencing to improve this, but there's also times where people are just overtraining, right? But regardless, we need to improve the training. And if we eat more, we sleep more, and we manage stress better, as well as maybe train less, we're probably going to manage hormones much better. However, a lot of those things don't lead to better results long term, as you know, because you have to train hard, you have to train often, and sometimes you have to eat less to lose fat. But that's why in this phase, we are trying to do this in order to improve the hormones, not necessarily lose fat. The other aspect of this hormone area is the metabolism, right? And your metabolism will improve almost immediately when your hormones do. The hormone system is going to negatively impact testosterone, thyroid. It's going to increase cortisol, which is the stress hormone. All of these things are going to negatively impact the metabolism, most likely slow the metabolism down, especially the thyroid hormone. That is like the big driver or the control system, you could say, of the metabolism. So when somebody has hypothyroidism, for example, or Hashimoto's, that's going to slow down the metabolism because it's a slowing of the thyroid. And when we diet or we're eating too little or we're having a lot of stress, that is exactly what can happen. And we don't want to be in that state going into a diet because the diet's not going to work. You're already dieted down. You're already slowing the metabolism down and stressing the thyroid out. We need to reverse that. So the big thing to understand here is that we just need to get into maintenance calories in order to support a healthier metabolism. One, because eating more food is going to lead to a faster metabolism. But two, when we bring our calories up to maintenance, and this could be because the client has been off and on yo-yo dieting before reaching us, or it's because the person is trying to diet and through the week they're great and they're eating low calories, which throughout the week might drop some weight, but it's also suppressing their thyroid and metabolism. And then on the weekend, they binge or they go party or they eat way more calories than they realize. And that puts on weight. So, net result by the end of the week, they don't lose weight, but they are cyclically negatively impacting their hormones. And so we want to recover this. And part of that means, in that process, we're going to also improve our metabolism. And if we look at this here, eating more calories is the most effective way to directly increase your metabolism because, these different abbreviations, this is percentages of our total daily energy expenditure. So that is how many calories we burn per day. We have EAT, EAT, exercise activity thermogenesis. We have TEF, which is thermic effect of food. So that's how many calories you burn through digestion. Then we have NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis. This is how many calories we burn just from involuntary movement, right? Subconsciously walking and moving, and the way I'm moving my hands as I talk right now is part of NEAT. And then we have BMR, our basal metabolic rate, which is just how many calories it requires, for me to just sit here and not say a word. How many calories does that require? My body requires calories to just survive. That's your BMR, right? And so knowing this, well, if we look at EAT, exercise activity thermogenesis, if we eat more, we're going to train better, we're going to train harder, we're going to build more muscle, that's going to increase. Our TEF is thermic effect of food, meaning the more food we eat, the more calories we burn because more calories are being burned through thermic effect of food. And then our NEAT, our non-exercise activity thermogenesis, that is going to improve as well. So we're going to actually walk more, we're going to talk more, move more, our hand gestures are going to be more, standing more. All these things that we do throughout the day that burn calories through movement, that is non-exercise activity. I'm not intentionally exercising right now, but I am moving, and that requires calories. Those increase, and there's a lot of research to prove this. In fact, there's even research to show if you eat the majority of your calories in the morning, so you have a large bolus of calories for breakfast, let's say that's your biggest meal of the day, you are going to have a higher NEAT and a faster metabolism throughout the day. There's a lot of good research on what's called chrononutrition, and it's time-restricted feeding in a specific way. Instead of fasting in the morning, they're placing their biggest meal in the morning and stopping earlier in the day. But what they also found is that eating more calories in the morning led to a higher energy expenditure per day, which meant a higher maintenance caloric intake per person, which is obvious. You eat more, you have more energy, you move more. But this is exactly why during this primer phase, we want to capitalize on these aspects so that we can improve the metabolism, we can get more movement, better training, and actually eat more food, which allows us to start the diet from a better position. The next aspect of the primer phase that we are trying to really get a benefit from is stress, right? Managing stress and optimizing recovery. And I've already kind of alluded to, eating more food and sleeping more, and these things are going to help our hormones, help our get better, have a better metabolism, and also have a better ability to manage stress and recover. But how do we actually do some of this, right? So first, we need to eat more. We've said that. Next, I would recommend increasing carbs and protein. Carbs are going to help reduce cortisol. Cortisol is a stress hormone, and they have an inverse relationship. The hormone insulin has an inverse relationship with cortisol. So when we eat carbs, insulin does spike up. And a lot of people are afraid of this. This is not a bad thing. In fact, insulin is essentially an energy utilization hormone. It helps us store energy for better use. And if you're training hard, you need that because it's going to help you store carbohydrates as muscle glycogen to train harder and build muscle. But when insulin goes up, cortisol goes down. So a really good way to manage cortisol, the stress hormone, is to actually eat carbs because it's going to help reduce and blunt down that cortisol response. So we want more carbs. We also want more protein because that's going to improve recovery from training and overall reduce physical stress, as most people know. We want to increase sleep, quality, and quantity. Quantity, I would suggest 7+ hours per night. This is going to help avoid having low inhibition and low stress capacity. So research shows the less hours of sleep you get, the more likely it is that you're not going to be able to handle stressors very well, and it's also going to have a negative impact on your inhibition. Inhibition is your ability to make good decisions. So example, drink alcohol, you're going to have lowered inhibition. You make bad decisions when you're drunk. Very obvious, right? Well, when we're sleep deprived and stressed out, we also have a lowered inhibition, and that bad decision might just be falling off your diet. So we want to manage stress and we want to get enough sleep to make sure that we have better inhibition skills and we can make better decisions for the diet. And improving sleep quality is also going to help increase growth hormone levels, which is going to be a big driver of muscle and recovery. This is going to help us build muscle tissue. It's going to improve mental focus, and it's going to increase strength performance quite literally instantly, because if you get better sleep tonight, tomorrow you are going to train harder in the gym, and there's research to show that. And all of these things can happen from literally getting just 1 extra hour at night. So if somebody's getting 5 to 6 on average, we want to get them 6 to 7 on average. But overall, what we're trying to do is really just improve our state of mind and our well-being, because this is directly going to improve our motivation and enthusiasm for the fat loss phase. So as we manage stress and recovery, we are just getting more mentally ready to dive into the diet, and that enthusiasm and motivation to diet is going to pay dividends when the client steps into a fat loss phase. The next benefit here is developing consistency and increasing adherence. So really what we're trying to do here is put all of our, spend some time forming new habits, because that's going to be crucial for any diet. Whether you're a seasoned dieter and it's just a new way of dieting, you got to form a new habit that way. Or you've never dieted before and this is all fresh to you. Either way, we are going to be forming new habits, whether it's the way we diet or it's the diet itself. And habits are way easier to form, especially new ones or difficult ones that challenge your current lifestyle routine and current habits and systems. Those are way easier to develop when you're at maintenance. When you're in a deficit, you're stressed and you're tired and you don't want to necessarily acquire new habits and try hard and challenge yourself, even if it's necessary. However, when we're at maintenance and we're in a good state of recovery and stress management, it is much easier to form new habits, and we want to capitalize on that aspect during this primer phase. This is also a chance for people to get used to the tracking systems being used. So for us, we are tracking different aspects. For some clients, it's tracking macros. For some clients, it's tracking habits. But for almost all clients, it is tracking something. We're going to track weight. We're going to track measurements and progress in the gym. We are going to track biofeedback. And some of these things are daily. Some of them for people it's only weekly. No matter what, there's going to be metrics that need to be tracked, because that is part of how you adjust to lead to more fat loss in the future. But not only that, again, going back to the GPS analogy, I cannot get you where you want to be if I don't know where you're at right now. And I need those starting numbers. So what we're doing is getting used to tracking, and as a coach, we're gathering data about the client that we can further adjust. And part of this is we're also going to see the inconsistencies, because each individual going into a fat loss phase is going to be better at different things. They're going to be worse at different things. Different things are going to be harder for different individuals. And I want to see those inconsistencies and understand what I'm going to have to lean into and work on most with each person. And throughout this whole process, the communication between the client and the coach is obviously going to improve. And that's really, really crucial when going into a fat loss phase. Standardizing the diet is a big piece of this as well. And this is going to kind of accumulate as we've gone on, because if you're going to make an adjustment to a diet that's inaccurate, you can't accurately predict what that adjustment is going to do, right? If somebody is very consistent and I know exactly what they're doing with their diet, I'm going to make an adjustment and I can almost guarantee what the result is going to be because I know exactly what they're doing. So for fat loss, this is both very effective and very efficient, because if we standardize the diet, we can make some things staples that don't change too often, which makes it the planning easier for the client or the individual going through the fat loss phase. It also creates standardized metrics or numbers or visuals that we can adjust from. This standardization even applies to before and after pictures. If you're taking a before picture or a progress picture in a different setting on a different day at a different time with different lighting every single time, you cannot compare week to week, month to month. But if you take it every Saturday at 7 a.m. with the same lighting after the bathroom against the same wall with the same camera, it is going to be very easy to see that you either are or you are not making progress. And if you are not, we can then go to the standardized diet and know exactly what to tweak in order to progress that forward. So what we're really trying to do with a standardized diet is just make sure we have certain aspects in place that can be adjusted, whether that is calories and macros, or it's the measurements in the progress photos, or it's a literal meal plan, because maybe some people do better with eating the same things 6 out of 7 days a week. No matter what, we want a system around these things that is standardized that can be adjusted in the future. And towards the tail end of this primer phase, we begin to develop this standardization. And then lastly, we are going to establish these baselines. So now that we've done all this work, we have tracked, we have formed habits, we have improved tracking metrics and looking at different biofeedback markers. We're taking progress photos and measurements. We're building communication with the individual that is going through the fat loss phase. We have baselines that we are going to set as standards to follow, and then future adjustments will happen from. These are going to be things like steps, the training volume or the training split and program you're on, any programmed cardio potentially, which would be untracked steps. We don't want to track steps from cardio if it is intentional cardio, because your step count should be more reflective of your non-exercise activity, so not planned out activity. Total calories and macros, food groups should be mostly whole foods, meal timing frequency, sleep schedule, supplements, like all these things factor in of like, what is the baseline of what is normal so that we can start the fat loss phase with this normality and adjust from them. And in summary, this, what is this primer phase in kind of conclusion? So you can kind of take the cliff notes and understand why it's so important. What a primer phase really is just a short period of time to prime the body and develop consistency. We are forming habits, we are developing consistency, improving adherence, and we are priming the body psychologically, physically, and physiologically. So internally, mentally, and physically, the body is getting more recovered and prepared for the diet. And the main purpose is really just that. It's to develop that consistency and have a baseline to then adjust from so that the fat loss phase goes way more effectively and efficiently. It's easier for the client to adhere to, and they are going to be more enthusiastic and motivated by it because the results are also going to be effective quicker. You're going to see progress faster because your body is ready to adapt to the diet you put them in. And how long should this be? If you're an advanced dieter, you can sometimes get away with not doing it, but typically an advanced dieter, somebody who has dieted numerous times, and maybe they've already checked off some of these boxes before starting, they're going to be looking at 1 to 2 weeks. It's a short period of time to just kind of create some standardization and baselines before going into it. An intermediate dieter sometimes could get away with 1 week, but many times we're seeing all the way up to 4 weeks. And then a beginner dieter is going to be around 2 to 6 weeks. 1 to 2, as you can see, is the minimum for just about anybody. And then 6 is probably as far as you should go. If you're 6 weeks in and you haven't been able to establish all these things from a primer phase, you need a deeper intervention for the coaching. And it shouldn't be preparing for a fat loss phase anymore. You should just be focusing on good nutrition at that point. And again, we want to avoid skipping this at all costs, but There are times where individuals have checked these boxes prior to approaching us. And in those cases, there might be a case for skipping this. What's next is the progressive phase. So we'll save this for the next video, but essentially the next video is going to be about how to go through the diet itself, creating an actual timeline, creating the actual deficit, adjusting that diet along the way, and potentially implementing cardio so that you can further that progressive phase by getting leaner and leaner as the progressive phase goes on. If you need further help with your diet or accomplishing your fat loss goals, and all of this makes a lot of sense, but you're having a tough time putting it into a practical system, just check out the links that we have in the description. You can, of course, apply for coaching and talk to one of us for free, but also we have countless free downloads and free guides that will teach you everything you need to know about how to successfully plan a diet for a fat loss phase. So again, just search through the description of this video. You're going to find countless links that can help you out.